Good morning, everybody. It's Rob's Game Group. Hope everybody's doing good. And let's see. You know what? I don't normally start like this, but I'm going to go ahead and just get this out of the way. If you like the channel, please subscribe, hit the notification, give a thumbs up to the video, share it with your friends. If you'd like to communicate with me and my group, you can find us on Facebook at Rob's Game Group, all one word. This video might get a little long. And if it does, I'm going to break it into two videos that I will post back to back. And I'll put a link to the second video in the description. Because I got a lot to say about this. So let's just get started, shall we? I would like, if I may, to take you on a journey back in time. And we're going to have to go way back. So hang on. We're going all the way back to January the 20th, 1989. That's right, folks. 32 years ago. Something significant happened on that day. Was it that George Bush was sworn in as the new president of the United States? No. Not that that wasn't important. It just wasn't important to a then 13-year-old me. Now, if you weren't alive in 1989, it was a different world than the one we live in today. There were no cell phones, no internet. Cable television was a new and big thing. Elements of fantasy weren't everywhere like they are today. Movies and television dealing with swords and sorcery, well, they were few and far between. And I had no idea that when I woke up that morning, something would happen that night that would change the course of who I would become over the next 30 plus years. You see, there was a show that I used to watch every Friday night with my mom. And it starred Linda Hamilton and Ron Perlman. It was a modern day, well then modern day, telling of Beauty and the Beast, the name of the show. What was important, I guess, about that particular Friday night was that the episode of Beauty and the Beast that night was called Labyrinths. Labyrinths was the season 2, episode 8 story about a boy and his friends playing a game very much like Dungeons and Dragons. Though at the moment I had no idea what that meant. I was completely enthralled with the idea of this game. After the episode was over, I raced to the phone on the wall in the kitchen and called my best friend Joey. I had to tell him about this game that they were playing on the show and how cool it was. It was then that Joey informed me there was a real game like this, and it was called Dungeons and Dragons. Now, even though I didn't know anything about D&D, I knew I wanted it to be part of my life. And what happened next changed the course of my life, and I would never be the same. So we jump forward, but this time only a few hours. The next day was a cool but sunny Saturday morning of January the 21st, 1989, my personal fixed point in time. My father worked construction, and he worked out of town all week at this time in my life. Excuse me. Having some breathing issues. He would, however, come home each weekend for a visit. And when he did, he and my mom would always take my sister and myself out to do something on Saturday during the day and give us some spending money. On this particular Saturday, we went to a local flea market in town. It was an old drive-in that had been closed years before and been converted into the flea market. There was a shop inside that Joey had told me about the night before, a shop that sold D&D game boxes. It was there that day that I purchased the red box that red box. And I began my journey down a road of role-playing, or the role-playing hobby, and it's still going strong to this day. Years went by and my friends and I played not just D&D, but we learned of other games and explored them as well, like GURPS, Palladium Fantasy, Rifts, TMNT and Other Strangeness, Star Wars, and more. To be fair, we likely got a ton of rules wrong back then, but it didn't matter, because even though we didn't realize it at the time, we were playing by the golden rule. And that rule was simple. As long as we were having fun, that's all that mattered. Now we're going to jump forward in time again. To present day. Fantasy and sci-fi are everywhere. They invade almost every facet of our lives. Television shows, movies, books, art, and more. Dungeons & Dragons is a household name, and unlike during the 80s and 90s, it is well accepted and thought of as a cool hobby. There are RPGs for nearly every type of setting that you can think of. There are more ways to get involved in the hobby than we ever dreamed of back in the old days. Today there isn't just role-playing. There are also subcultures of role-playing. There are board game / RPG hybrids, LARPing, and lots of others. The one that I'm going to talk about today is known as OSR, or Old School Revival or Old School Renaissance Gaming. OSR, it's basically the idea of taking old systems for RPGs, revamping them, cleaning them up slightly with a touch of modern game design so that they emulate the feeling of playing back in the glory days of gaming. Now, I've picked up a couple of these to review and talk about on the channel, but the one that I am starting with is one that I have fallen completely in love with, and that is the basic fantasy role-playing game. I also picked up White Box, which is a very similar deal, but between the two of them, I like basic fantasy the best. So, what is it? Well, like I said, it's like taking the setup and the feeling of old school D&D, like the red box, and using some more modern game theory like they used with 3rd edition and the open game license, which makes all this possible, to clean these old school D&D games up and make them more accessible to new players. An OSR game, or this one in particular, has everything you need in one book. It's got character creation. It's got your spells. It's got character advancement. It's got magic and more. It has that classic setup and feel of 1st or 2nd edition with a touch of 3rd edition. It's easy. It's simple to play. I'm running a Friday night game with this system for my kids, 2 of which are 10 years old and 11 years old, and they love it. And it was not hard for them to grasp. I pre-made the characters, which even if they had made the characters probably wouldn't have taken 10-15 minutes. They're really easy to make. And then put it out there for them to play. I explained the rules. I really only had to go over everything once, and they had it. And we played and we had a blast. Like I said, it's got character creation for race and class, magic, gear, treasure, and it has a monster section in the main book, a bestiary or monster manual inside the main book that puts a lot of modern RPGs to shame. Just in the main book alone, the monsters take up pages 55 to 128. That's 73 pages of monsters in the core rulebook. That's 190 monsters, if I count it right. A lot of your modern RPGs don't come with anywhere near that amount of monsters or adversaries or whatever for you to throw at your players. I'm a big fan of Savage Worlds, but I've always said that one of the issues I have with Savage Worlds is the lack of bestiary. The main book has, 20, 25 monsters in it, something like that. I'm round guessing off the top of my head. There's not many. It's literally just a handful to get you going. I hope that when they do their Savage Worlds Pathfinder crossover this year, that they end up doing a bestiary version of the Pathfinder bestiary for Savage Worlds. That would be great. But this is everything you need to play. And here's the best part. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything to play old school D&D. It even tells you on the back of the book, don't buy this book. Well, not yet anyway. The basic fantasy role-playing game rules are available for free on our website. The website is www.basicfantasy.org. I'll put a link in the description. There you will also find adventures, alternate rules, and other supplementary materials to enhance your game. Now, if you don't want to print the rules yourself, please do buy this book and enjoy. I'm a tactile person, so I'm going to get the book. Now, that being said, I've been to their website, I've downloaded everything they've got, and I had read through and created characters before the books even got here from Amazon. If you do want to buy the book, this is a complete role-playing game, old school role-playing game. And you can get it Drive-Thru RPG, Lulu, Amazon has it. I bought mine from Amazon. They're $5. $5. And if you got Prime, there's no shipping involved. You can't beat that. Period. So, okay, Rob, it's cheap. Or free. But is it worth getting? Yeah. Yeah, it is. It does a fantastic job of giving you the old school feeling. Like you have 4 races: human, elf, dwarf, and halfling. You have 4 classes. You have fighter, cleric, magic user, and the thief is in there. And the demi-humans, which they refer to as demi-humans in there. They're not, everybody's not all the same like they are in a lot of modern games now. They actually have differences and rivalries between the races. But depending on the demi-human you're playing, you can multi-class into different things as well. However, multi-classing is very expensive experience-wise to progress. So I don't recommend it. The game, unlike, I like to think of it a lot of like, this is like the red box from D&D, but with an ascending armor class system instead of a descending. So there's no THAC0. And I always hated THAC0. So there you go. It's not that THAC0 doesn't work. It's a concept that's hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. And with the ascending armor class like you have in 3rd edition D&D, and a lot of current edition like 5th edition uses it, it was easy for my kids to pick up and play. And to me, that's something that I'm always looking for, are games that I can play with my kids. It's not that I don't have people to play with. I have plenty of people to play. I probably have too many people to play with. I could fill up multiple game nights a week. But one of the things I want to do is I want to have a game night that I play with my kids and pass this hobby along to them. And I've been doing this little by little over the years. But this game not only allows me to do that because they understood the game. We had a blast playing it. They're looking forward to playing again Friday night. But they're playing D&D. They're playing old school D&D, which is even cooler in my book. So you might ask, if you're a current player, if you don't have the nostalgia link to it that somebody like me does, you might ask, well, why would I play this? It sounds like it has less options, and it sounds like it's less support than, say, Pathfinder or D&D. And you're right, it does. It has a lot less options. But that's how D&D was back in the day. The system was simple. The system was very hackable. You could take out, put in, make your own rules, make your own races, classes, whatever, and it was very easy to do. And it is again with something like this. It's fantastic. It's a lot of hand waving and, yeah, this works or that doesn't work. But that's how old school D&D was. We didn't sit around and wait on TSR to put out a booklet to tell us how to do this or do that, because with the box sets, the rules were spread out across different box sets as your characters advanced, and we didn't always have access to those box sets. And there was a lot of times where we were like, well, how do we do this? Okay, well, we just made up something. We made up our own rules, we put them into the game, and we played like that. And that's how it was back in the day. There wasn't any internet to go to. So, why play it if you don't have a nostalgic tie to the roots of role-playing? Like I said, like us old grognards do. That doesn't mean there's nothing here for you. For one thing, the price of RPG books has increased exponentially since the old days. I mean, a player's handbook alone now is like $50. Maybe you don't want to drop hundreds of dollars into your hobby. Well, it's hard to pass up a product that's essentially free. And when I say you can get the PDF off their website, it isn't like a lot of sites that give you like the quick start version for free or something like that. No, it's the full game. It's this book. The entire book for free. And all of their other books are on there too. Maybe you already play current D&D in some form or another, and you want to change. That's cheap to get, easy to play, fast to pull out and teach, and fully supported with tons of adventures. And player GM aids that are all free as well. Most of all, I think you should try it because it's fun. Like I said, you can get it at their website. You can get it on Lulu or Amazon. There are most of their supplement books are available on Amazon, and they are like $3 and $4 a piece. Just to show, like, that's the main book. I got a bunch of these in this week. I don't love the cover art on this book. I don't hate it. I just don't love it. But this is the Basic Fantasy Equipment Emporium. Get the glare off of it. And it's an entire book of equipment. And I'm not going to go through everything in this video because I'm going to do other videos to talk about what's in the other books. But it's a book full of equipment. Weapons, armor, goods, supplies, gear, all kinds of stuff. Then you have the Basic Fantasy Field Guide. And I think there's another one of these, a part 2, on the website. I haven't seen it in print yet. This is essentially your monster manual. And it's just another book of tons of more monsters. You've got adventures. This is a collection of 6 adventures here that all use the same map. You got more adventures. This is a campaign. And you can get all of these, like here's Anthology 1 and Anthology 2 of adventures. You can get all of these off of Amazon for $3 to $4 a piece. The main book, the Basic Fantasy book, hell, I bought 3 of them. They're $5 a piece. I kept one for me, I gave one to my son, and I got another one that I'm going to toss out on the table in case any of my players want to look something up. and they don't have their book, which I'm definitely going to suggest that they get, because if you can't afford $5 for a role-playing game, or you can't afford a free PDF, then this is probably not the hobby for you. Joking aside, it's fantastic, man. I cannot express enough how much I love this game. I had been doing research on some other games actually that weren't even related to this, and watching some YouTube videos on that stuff from friends of mine who or at least people I know on YouTube that I respect their opinions. And I started looking between those videos and Amazon what I could get my hands on, because I'm always looking for new content that I'm not only interested in reading, but stuff that I can share with the community, you guys. What I was actually looking at was Dark Places and Demogorgons, which is a kind of retro style game, but from what I understand, but it's more like Stranger Things. It's in the 90s and you're high school kids, and I'm still going to get that and check it out. But that led me down a rabbit hole that led me through finding White Box, plus some other ones. And Basic Fantasy is where I landed. And I had seen it come up on my suggestions on Amazon a couple of times, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I just skimmed past it. I didn't even pay attention to it. But learning about OSR and what it was drew me in, and I started looking more into these games. So I ordered some of them to take a look at. I ordered the White Box and the Basic Fantasy book first. Then I went and downloaded the Basic Fantasy book. And before the first one got to me, I had already ordered like 10 more books from them. It has that old school feel. But even if you're not in it for the old school feel, it is simple, it's fast, it's classic D&D. Yes, there are race restrictions on classes, and that's fine. That is not a problem, because that's what old D&D was like. But this is also something that I've made a bunch of pre-gen characters for it. I got a stack of adventures over here. I have actually had friends over before that wanted to know if I had an RPG that I could just pull off the shelf and we could play. And while I do, I have a few that we could do that with. This is literally being able to pull D&D off the shelf, old school D&D, and play it with your friends. Already have characters made, already have adventures. I could just grab it, throw it on the table, and we could play. And if they played D&D back in the day, even if they didn't play 1st or 2nd edition, if they played 3rd edition, it's going to be familiar enough that they can look at it, and within just a few minutes, they'll understand how to play the game. Because it's not hard. I cannot sing high enough praises about this. If you are an old school gamer like me, get the book. If you like old school D&D, or you're just interested in seeing what the game was like back then, get the book. If you want something fast that you can pull out and play with your friends, family, kids, whatever, get the book. If you just like reading cool fantasy stuff, get the book. I don't care what the reason. If you're a gamer, if you're a role player, get the book. If nothing else, go download the PDF. Read the PDF. And I almost guarantee you're going to want to play a game with it. Like I said, I'm running a game on Friday nights. My kids are playing. They're having a blast. I'm actually starting a game tonight for my adult group. Only one of them knows what's going on. The rest of them don't know. They just know I have something special planned. But I already have pre-gen characters lined up. I've picked the adventure that I'm going to run. The author, Chris Gonnerman, I think is how his name's pronounced. It's actually one of his adventures that I'm going to be running tonight. And I assure you they're going to love it, because a lot of these guys played old school D&D like me, and it's just a fantastic feeling. Man, the nostalgia alone is amazing. But even without that, it's also, like I said, it's a super simple game to just grab off the shelf and play with your friends, family, kids, whatever. I am just rambling about how much I love this now. There are other OSRs out there. I haven't looked at all of them, and I don't want anybody to think that my channel is going to become strictly OSR, because there are channels out there that do that. There are channels that go through this book page by page, show you everything about it, so I'm not going to do that. Look it up on YouTube. There's plenty of great videos out there about it. I'm just expressing my love for this new old game I found. I am going to look at a couple of other OSRs and some of the differences between them, like White Box. I bought it, so I'm gonna. And I don't want anybody to think I hate White Box. I just like Basic Fantasy better. There are some things that White Box does better, in my opinion, but then there are other places that I feel like it's lacking. Basic Fantasy really, really, really scratches that itch for me for playing Basic Fantasy, and I love it. So, download the book, read the book, go buy the book, play the game. You won't be disappointed. And maybe playing this will give you that fixed moment in time, that spark of imagination to where you can just take a game and run with it and make up your own stuff. I actually have a fantasy setting that is my own personal setting called Black Shar, and it's I keep all my notes on it in my GM book here, and it's got tons of stuff, my maps, my notes, everything. I originally wrote the setting to use with Savage Worlds to play fantasy because I do love Savage Worlds, but within a few days of having my hands on this, I've already converted what few mechanics I needed to switch it to Basic Fantasy. And I didn't ditch the Savage Worlds version. I actually have it where I can run it either way. If I have a group that only wants to play Savage Worlds, I'm good. If I want to do it with Basic Fantasy, I'm good. Because most of what is in here is fluff. There's very little in the way of mechanics. I wanted my setting, for the most part, to be usable with any set of rules. So that's really all I've got to go over today. I just really wanted to gush over this game and the point in time that it took me back to, and how much I love it and how much I think you should check it out. I am going to do some other videos where I don't know if I'll necessarily do a page by page, but I am going to talk about the adventures and some of the stuff that's in the other books. So, stay tuned for that material. And that's all I've got for right now. Until next week, good gaming and good luck.